gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for February 28th, 2025. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, Monster Hunter Wilds is off to a roaring start despite numerous complaints about its performance on PC. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host to Game Mess Mornings. It's Lexi Luddy, everybody. Lexi, how are you doing?
Not too bad, Grubb. This being an hour later is really fucking with me. It's now 5
Yep.
p.m. for me.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so I'm like, I'm finishing up for the day, and here I am talking with you chuckleheads like it's the fucking morning.
That's right.
So I'm pretty sure last week Tam mentioned that he wanted you to try to get Jordan on.
I didn't even try.
Yeah, I wanted to tell the entire Giant Bomb audience, Jordan Midler will not appear on this podcast until he takes me on one-on-one at, what's the name of a wrestling event?
Let's see, Fastlane.
At WWE Fastlane. Get fucked, Midler. You're not even Midler, you're minor. Get fucked, and I'm major. And if you divide that by 2, then I don't know the rest of it.
No, you're cutting a promo. It works. Yeah. That's perfect. Yeah, Jordan Midler, a coward, and we all know it. Lexi, how are you doing otherwise?
I'm doing pretty okay. I just got back from visiting grandparents today, so that was like fun. I've been trying to digitize old family tapes, which, boy, analog signals, they're wonderful to work with. And the PAL version of analog signals, even more fun.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. That's got to be a fun challenge. I don't blame analog. I blame digital. I think digital did not respect analog enough, and so I put full blame on that side of the equation there. But yeah, I've been plugging the N64 into various things recently, and that's been wild to see, like, what makes this work and what doesn't.
The nice thing of this is, like, yeah, I'm like recording all this like family footage or whatever from camcorders, but actually what I'm doing is getting a setup for like recording my PS2.
Yeah,
that's what I'm actually doing.
Yeah, you can, once they're done with the VCR, you can just plug in the PS2 and you're good to go there. That's definitely, I've been spending a lot more time thinking about plugging in old consoles and stuff like that. I'm not going to become a collector. I like Dan Reichert's basement, but I don't need my basement to be filled with games. I just want the old consoles to have like the EverDrive on it and stuff. And that's been a fun process getting all set
I
up.
wish I was the same way, but I'm looking at an Amazon basket with Babylon's Fall in it right now, and I'm like, I should own that.
Well, okay. Owning games for a bit, I like a lot. I do have multiple copies of Balan's Wonderworld, and I don't know who to blame for that.
You're welcome.
Yep. Well, then I do know who to blame.
At least one of them.
Well, at least one. I think I might have bought the other one. I don't know. I'm trying to think. Did you give me this Switch one too at some point?
Yes, I gave you the Switch one at Summer Games Fest. So you can play it on the go.
And I must have bought the Xbox one myself. They're both up there on the wall. I should get that back in frame. You playing anything big right now?
I had just reviewed Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, which I super liked. I reviewed it for Gamer Guides, gave it 88. Guested on the tail end of that stream. I know you've been enjoying that game.
I have.
It's just a real good time. I put like 50 hours into it, wound up platinuming it. And yeah, it's kind of what I needed. I'll take one of these a year. If they want to keep doing one of these a year, I'll play through one of these a year. And I just installed Monster Hunter. I got a code just today. So I'm going to play that this evening. I'm playing a thing that's embargoed, but I think is fucking awesome. And I also played a bunch of Ninja 5.0 yesterday.
Oh, how'd you find that?
It's good. It's
solid, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like a fancy port or anything. There's a bit of like artwork and small things like that, but like it's very solid. It's like a step down from the Castlevania collections and stuff like that when it comes to like the stuff that it has in it, but it has a nice rewind feature. It has trophy support and achievements and everything, and it has both Ninja 5.0 and Ninja Cop on it, so both regions. And yeah, that game's fun as shit. That game's still really fun.
Yep, yeah, it's been a long time hidden gem on the Game Boy Advance to the point where the physical copies that they didn't print a ton of those, very expensive. So north of $100, I think, a lot of the time. So yeah, being able to just buy this game for $25, pretty good deal. All right, let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Monster Hunter Wilds surpasses 1.3 million concurrent players on Steam. This is from Ben Lyons at Game Reactor. It looks like we'll be hearing about Monster Hunter Wilds smashing some crazy sales milestones in the coming hours, or perhaps at the latest days. We say this because on Steam alone, the game almost just surpassed 1 million concurrent players. This is the earlier version of the story. They will update it here at the end. And this is all ahead of its opening weekend, which will no doubt see this peak rise and rise and rise. That's usually how it works with these games. They hit their peak in the first weekend a lot of times. Although this is a game that could continue to grow over the next couple of weeks as word of mouth spreads. Although maybe that won't be so positive. We'll talk about that as well. The crazy thing about this number is it's all but affirms that 1 million copies of the game have been shifted on PC alone. Lexi, usually with when you look at the concurrent numbers, and as a reminder, that is people playing the game at the same time right now online on Steam. That's where we get these numbers from usually. It's probably safe to assume that it's usually sold about double that, right? Because there's going to be
Yeah.
people in the awake regions, places in the world where it's daylight, where people are still playing games that aren't playing the game in that moment, and then there's the whole other half of the world that might be sleeping in that moment, who also probably have bought quite a few copies of that game. So yeah, this is probably racing to 2-3 million copies sold on Steam instantly. That is really, really impressive. This franchise has officially broken through, right? I mean, it's been huge for a long time, but it feels like it has caught on in a major way with this release.
Yeah, I'd be super curious to see these numbers compared to World and Iceborne, to see how big those were on Steam when they first launched. I know they launched later on Steam, and that was a big problem. That those games came out later on Steam than on consoles. But yeah, without even factoring in console sales, which in regions like Japan, a lot of these sales are going to be on PS5s
Yep.
instead of on PC. Yeah, it's a wild number. It's huge. It's games just don't sell like that at the moment for the most part. Even games that sell well don't sell that well unless they're Call of Duty right now.
Yep. It's 1.3 million concurrents on Steam. 1,307,976 is what it hit earlier today. Earlier today, which makes it the 6th most concurrently played game at one time ever on Steam already. And again, it's going to probably have more people playing this weekend than this. So,
I mean, it
yep,
puts it right up there with Black Myth Wukong, and when you consider what a cultural moment that
right.
was for the most populous country on the planet, the cultural penetration worldwide for this is really impressive.
Yep.
So yeah, it's super interesting.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. Releasing on Steam at the same time as the consoles obviously helped, but you wouldn't expect the jump from World. Sambo Nice in chat reminds us that World had an all-time peak of 330,000, and then Rise had an all-time peak of 231,000. So yeah, you could see already that it's grown significantly, more than tripled. Honestly, kind of quadrupled. So yeah, that this is the game catching on, breaking through, finding that massive, wide appeal audience. And it's what Capcom wanted to do with this game. So mission accomplished in a lot of ways. Now, there is the other half of this, at least on Steam, on PC, and that is while the numbers for concurrent players off the charts, the reviews on Steam, the user reviews, much more middling. They are, I think it's below 50% positive reviews or something like that, in the 40% range for thumbs up or thumbs down. The majority have given it a thumbs down because of performance problems. It is. I watched a little bit of the Digital Foundry thing, and it's like, hey, if you have a GPU with 8 GB of RAM, and NVIDIA still loves selling GPUs with only 8 GB of VRAM, this game is really rough, to the point where you have to turn textures down to their lowest. And this is a game where textures, they call it medium, but the medium texture option, it makes the game look really bad. And then even then, you're still going to get quite a bit of stuttering. And so they like just the across the board recommendation in this moment is, don't buy this game on PC unless you can brute force your way to performance. Um, that is not hurting the game in this moment. Lexi, do you think that is something that could slow it down?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely like Steam reviews last forever, and that's something that a lot of smaller developers have been finding for a long time. I think No Man's Sky, they basically like threw a party in the office when they ticked over to from mixed to
Yeah.
mostly positive or
Well,
whatever.
how long? And that
Um
took 8 years, 9 years, or
it
something
is,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it is something that lingers around the game, and it's a hard number to change because how many people go back and change a review after if things get fixed. That is to say, like, if Capcom do fix it, I know they put in a bunch of work to Dragon's Dogma 2, and that runs a fair bit better now, both on like base hardware, PS5 Pro and PC. So hopefully they do support it. And like, you imagine that when it comes to just goodwill in the community, they kind of have to now that so much of their player base is there.
Yeah. I think they will make improvements over time, but you get the sense that they were using some crutches on PC. The fact that it starts with a dialog box suggesting that you turn on NVIDIA DLSS frame generation it was worrisome to the guys over at Digital Foundry, and it's something I haven't seen in a game before. That is usually an option that is unchecked by default, and you go in there, turn it on if you have the performance to plug those frame generation frames on top of decent performance. The trouble is, if you have stuttering and performance that maybe drops to the 30, 40 frames per second range, frame generation basically doesn't function the way you need it to get a good looking game. So it was weird that they're like, no, just turn this on. This is what we expect you to do. So just take it and run. Um, it's a sign that maybe they are hoping they can put a band-aid on there with brute force methods. And it's okay. You definitely came in hot, at least for the PC version. Now PlayStation 5, Xbox, haven't heard similar complaints. Seems like it's running
Yeah.
pretty well on those platforms.
And
Definitely PlayStation.
it is one of those things where like this is a genuinely big issue that probably just doesn't crop up in a lot of reviews, because you think of the people who are asking for a PC code when Monster Hunter comes in, they have a good PC. They have looked at what that game is like and they're like, yeah, no, I'd rather play this on PC than on my console. Um so it's just something that probably hasn't come up in a lot of reviews up until it gets in the hands of people who have more mid-end PCs, and this is their only way to play games. This is their only platform to play games on, and then it's a huge problem.
Yeah, it's an issue. There's also, and we'll get back to the performance here in a second because Capcom did respond to that. But let's kind of go through some of the other criticisms here. Uh, they did the kind of an old nasty trick, that one that I'm not a fan of and have always really despised when publishers do this move. Uh, During the review period, there was no inkling of this thing that has now already reared its head now that the game is live, to change your appearance. You get like one free time to change your character's appearance in certain ways. Like I think you can like change your hair at any time for free. But if you want to go in there and make more drastic changes, you quickly get into a microtransaction store and you have to pay some money. And it's, okay, wait, where did this come from? And I get why they don't have these stores sometimes running when it's in a review period, I suppose. But it's like that is part of the game. It should be there for reviewers to assess and decide how it affects things. And so to turn it on once it's live, I I very much dislike that. But
And
this
like
is
that
that's a Capcom move recently.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that, like, that's why review guides are there. Review guides are there to let you know about things that may not be fully working purely because it's a not out to the public version of the game. Or, you don't have all the additional information that you have once a game is publicly available. That's stuff that should be upfront and told to reviewers, and it's super shitty that it's not. Like, I've only found out about that today, browsing through Blue Sky, and I was like, man, that sucks. Because tonight I kind of just wanted to load up and play a bit of the game and check it out and then go back and change my character later. But now I'm going to be like, oh, I have to get my character fucking right. So I'm going to be in there for fucking 2 hours making sure my character looks right. And it's also worth noting that, like, pretty much all the reviewers that do get these games get the deluxe edition, which
Yeah,
have the
maybe
extra
and maybe that's what happened here. Yeah, good point.
yeah, which have extra cosmetics and things like that. Um, and so you're kind of like you're going into it with the mindset of like, oh, this game like has a bunch of cosmetics from the go. Even though maybe a third of them or half of them were stuff that you got because you got the deluxe version.
Hmm.
Um, and you just don't pay it that much attention to each and every cosmetic item that
Right.
came in the version of the game that PR sent to you. You just start playing the game for review. So yeah, I think that's like super shitty, and fucking don't do that.
Yep. Yeah, it's annoying. It's uh, definitely a black mark on the way Capcom has operated recently. They have done similar sort of microtransactions in their games a lot recently. I think people pointed out in chat, Worlds had similar stuff. Dragon's Dogma 2 had similar microtransactions. So
I mean, like, even weirdly enough, the Resident Evil games, you look at their store
yeah,
pages, they are chock full of bullshit, and you look at it and you're like, I don't want any of this because it ruins the balancing of the game. Like, why
yeah.
would I ever want to engage with any of this stuff?
And maybe there's something to be said for the reason people don't complain is a lot of this stuff is easy to ignore, but being able to change the way your character like just looks at a base level, charging for that feels weird,
Especially
scummy
when, like,
even.
when such a big point to this game was them
Fashion.
being like, yeah, was them being like, oh, transmog is something that we've worked with from the beginning, and we want you to be able to customize your character and look how you want to look. And then to take the maybe most personalized part of that and like coordinate off as something that you may have to pay extra for if you want to go in deep, sucks. I remember I hadn't played Destiny 2 for years. But they reintroduced the option to change your character. And like I put in 3,000 hours into Destiny 1. Like I loved my character. But when I went back to play it, every time I went back to play it, I was like, oh, it's a man. That's not cool. And then I went back in and they were like, oh yeah, you can just change your character's whole design now, and you can change your gender and you can change whatever. And I was like, oh, that's nice. Changed literally nothing for anyone else if they don't want it to, but this is a nice addition, and it's something that I can go back to, change my character, and now suddenly I feel way more inclined to play Destiny 2 again. Because there's one less thing that I look at when I load up, and I'm like, and that's like ultimately what all these things are, is whether it's a thing that like is personal in my case, or if it's a microtransaction, they're all like these tiny hang-ups. And you'd think that those are the tiny hang-ups that game developers and that publishers are trying to like stay away from right now because it's
Yeah.
so hard to get people to even get in the door and play their games. Um, and like news stories like this, we've seen them snowball out of proportion because people take them at their worst and read way too much into them. So it's a weird thing that they've kind of allowed to slip by.
Yeah, and Capcom has mostly gotten away with it for the most part. Now, people point out like there was definitely references to this is the way it would work in the beta and during the review period. It's just, yeah, God, I read a couple of reviews and no one mentioned anything like this. And I guess it's easy to if you didn't interact with this stuff or you got the character you wanted when you started, it'd be easy to miss this sort of thing. So I could see that that's probably what happened here as well. Either way, it's like the fundamental criticism here, of course, is this is a weird thing to charge people for. It feels nickel and dimey for products that are already very expensive things to purchase. And
Yeah, like I went looking at that deluxe edition. It's like 130 euro. It
yep,
is expensive.
yep, absolutely. All right. So Back to the performance issues. Capcom has responded for the PC issues. This is from Jordan Midler at VGC. Capcom has responded
Who?
to performance.
Who?
Jordan Midler
Uh-huh.
responded, and they said, let's see here. Monster Hunter Wilds was released on Friday, and almost as soon as the PC version was in the public's hands, players reported issues with optimization, performance, and more. The game, which has received praise from fans outside of the performance issues, hit almost 1 million concurrent players, blah, blah, blah. Now, Capcom has responded to the issues and has provided some suggestions to fans as to how to fix their performance problems. A post on Monster Hunter Status, the franchise's official support account, reads, if you're experiencing any initial issues with Monster Hunter Wilds on Steam, please try updating your graphics driver, turning off compatibility mode, and then readjust your settings. In the linked post on the Monster Hunter support website, Capcom has suggested several steps that could fix the issues, including that driver update, adding the game's folders and files to the player's antivirus exception list, and more. Yeah, this is a bit much too, because it's like I get like, okay, these things might be able to help 1 or 2%, but none of these things are going to actually fix the fundamental issues.
It kind of like it puts the onus on the consumer for something that,
Yes, and I think fair enough, but like you go into the game, and I think there's a reason to have some hope. They're like, okay, look at all these graphics options. These things like it actually presents itself as very helpful, where each setting has a rating for how much it affects the different components on your PC. So it's like this is affecting your CPU the most, or it's kind of affecting your CPU, but it's actually affecting your GPU way more. So maybe turn that down and kind of see if that helps. Here's something that's like just blasting your RAM. Maybe that's the issue, because there's a RAM meter as well that you see in a lot of games. And in that Digital Foundry video, he demonstrates that like he goes to settings that are well below the like yellow line, not even the red line, but the yellow line for performance for VRAM on the 4060. And even in that case, there is a ton of stuttering, especially when just turning the camera at the beginning of the game. And that all of that is after a 6-minute shader compiling period when you first start up the game. So it's just like, okay, it feels like this should be running a lot better. And I don't know.
Do
I
you
think
want
I
to know
just,
the worst part about all this?
yeah,
Greg Miller's going to be so insufferable about this.
I can't
He's
imagine why.
he's going to get people so mad about it.
Yep. Yeah. They played a bunch yesterday. I'm sure they were all on PS5 for the most part. But yeah, it is annoying because yeah, I get it. This game clearly can run better. It is better optimized on PS5. Although some people in chat mentioned that some people weren't happy with the PS5 Pro version. I have not been able to keep up with that, so I don't know. Yeah, and Sean's saying it's not good on PS5 either. So okay, there you go. Yeah, I think this goes back to what I was about to get to next, which is Capcom switching the Resident Evil or the RE engine, Reach for the Moon engine, to open world, and kind of seeing a lot of what happened with Dragon's Dogma 2 repeated here. They just have not been able to sort of optimize this thing for the open world games they are now making with that thing. And it's a bit of a shame, because the storyline of RE engine up to this point was, hey, this thing is powerful, it's optimized, runs great. RE engine games can scale down to the Switch pretty easily because it is so well optimized, and Capcom knows how to use it. And then they're like, well, let's make it for open world games now. And that instantly kind of just changed everything. And it comes down to what the problem seems to be is streaming in assets into RAM, and that process just really crushing most processors on most devices.
And
So
like
yeah,
it's kind of the problem with computers as a whole, and it's something that is very easy for us to armchair criticize. Like a computer program runs great until it doesn't.
yeah,
And like we looked at the Ori engine and we're like, oh, Resident Evil Village looks incredible and all of this, but like we didn't know that that was maybe the Ori engine running 99% flat out, and then they push it a little bit harder, and suddenly it's just like, ah, man, it really was at its limit already, and we didn't realize.
yeah. And it's like the reality here is there are no modern engines that are just perfect at open world games where you have to stream in a lot of assets. UE5 struggles with that engine was made to be the open world engine. So yeah,
Keanu
it's
Reeves told me.
exactly. He called me his best friend and said, you're wonderful," or whatever the hell he said during that thing. Okay, yeah. So performance issues, but the game is popping off. Capcom will have a chance to make some improvements here, but Resident Evil 9 up next, rumored to be more open world because it's part of this initiative from Capcom with the RE engine. Any concerns about that, Lexi?
I mean, from a franchise perspective, I think it's a really good direction for like the franchise because Resident Evil has always been a series that loves to come back to Raccoon City, so actually exploring an open world Raccoon City sounds really exciting as a fan of the series.
Yeah,
From a performance side, I understand where people would be very hesitant of it. I do think that when you are in something like a city environment compared to something like Monster Hunter Wilds, which is a lot of big open wide spaces with very long field of distance and like long views out into the distance.
assets that you would
Um
have to stream in and be ready to
yeah,
stream in case the player goes in any direction.
I think they kind of have a little leg up by just having buildings as something that they can rely on to slow people down. Like we're going to talk about Half-Life in a second, but like it's been a thing since Half-Life of create a long haul, you know? Create a long haul so that we can load things in front of the
Yep.
player and delete things behind them. And ultimately it's not still that simple, but like that's still kind of the name of the game.
Yep, absolutely. Oh yeah, mechanized in chat, or I'm sorry, Max Lazarus in chat points out the God, what is it called? I just had it in my head, but the Horizon engine, Decima,
Decima. Yeah.
Decima. Yes, that has been pretty good for open world games so far. Although I'm sure they'll push that to the limit as well. All right, let's actually take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk about it. Half-Life 3 right after this, everybody. All right. Half-Life 3 almost fully finalized according to the latest rumors. This is from Marcus Persson at Game Reactor. The rumors surrounding Half-Life 3 continue unabated, and according to a new report from Tyler McVicker, the game may be close to completion, a conclusion reached by analyzing recently updated code from several of Valve's games. These include Dota 2, where references to HLX or Half-Life X were found, findings that would indicate that the game is in an optimization phase. In other words, the end of its development process, and includes, among other things, improvements to AI opponents, excuse me, and the implementation of FSR3. Based on his analysis of the code, McVicker predicts several features in the upcoming game. The advanced physics engine. The game could have a physics engine similar to that of Half-Life 2, with detailed simulations of fluids, buoyancy, and how objects are affected by fire. Intelligent AI, computer controlled characters are expected to react dynamically to sound, sight, and even smell, and adapt to changes in the environment. Dynamic gameplay elements such as enemies, health, and weapons can be placed randomly, like the AI director in Left 4 Dead series. And advanced vehicle simulation. Half-Life 3 can be as detailed as the most advanced simulators. Listen, it's not. I think people will hear this and be like, okay, someone's looking at games that are released. Look, they're diving into the code and they're finding stuff about Half-Life 3. That sounds unlikely. Rumors about Half-Life 3 being late in development are coming from more places than just this. There are reasons to believe that this actually is, at least in development. Whether or not it actually comes out, that's a whole other thing. Who knows with Valve and Steam? But it does seem likely. There were reasons that people were like actually predicting we would see Half-Life 3 at the Game Awards, and it's because that word is going around. So, Lexi, what do you think is happening here?
I think it's like at this point, and it sounds bad as someone whose job it is to care about this stuff. I'm just like, just call me when it happens.
Yep. Oh
You know?
no, I think a lot of people are in the boat with you thinking that exact same thing. That it's been so long now and people get so weird about this for so many years that what is the point of putting on the clown makeup? But just yeah, let's just talk
And
about this thing when it's real.
I do think like the bigger thing that I'm curious about at this point is like, I get that this would be a big deal, but as someone who wasn't alive when the first Half-Life came out, is it as big a deal? Sorry about that. Really sorry. Um, is it as big a deal as like let's say the Valve News Network might think it is? Because you know Michael McVick, or what's his name, Tyler
Tyler
McVicker.
McVicker. Yep.
Yeah, like this is his life and his livelihood and his
Yes.
personality. And I get that, but also like I know a lot of people who play video games pretty diehard who have never played a Half-Life and have never really understood why a Half-Life is important, and they're not that much younger than me.
Yep.
And so even as someone who knows that like, oh yeah, a new Half-Life is a big fucking deal, does that spread out to the younger generation, or has this game's memedom actually spread to the point that it will influence it still being relevant in 2025 or 2026?
Yeah, I think you're right to point out that it's definitely been a long time since we had one of these, since Half-Life 2, essentially. Yeah, Half-Life Alex, but that was VR. That's a different thing. Most people didn't play VR, haven't played VR games, and so like just wouldn't count that towards what we're talking about with this
And
relevancy.
a
Now,
lot of young people haven't played VR games because they're all broke as shit.
right, exactly. It's an expensive hobby within an expensive hobby. So the expectation that people would have played Alex, it's just not there for me. Um, but everyone has Steam,
Yeah.
and Half-Life 3 being front and center on Steam will give it that front running advantage there. And then on top of that, describing here, let's just take all this stuff at face value. Um, detailed simulation, physics, really smart AI. It doesn't sound like your typical AAA blockbuster video game from a major publisher. It sounds like the successor to the lineage of classic PC games that were trying to do ambitious things. So if they are going to do some interesting stuff here, this game feels like it has the chance to, build an audience on its own merit. And then on top of that, it is Half-Life 3. And the
Yeah.
memes have been there for a very long time. And even if you
I,
haven't played the games, the joke is, oh, are they going to announce Half-Life 3? Everyone at least knows that joke.
Jamie H in chat makes a really good point that they should just market it as a Skibbity Toilet prequel, and
Yes.
then we'll do great, you know?
I mean, the strong chance that there's a Skibbity toilet reference in the game. Yeah, for sure.
How fucked up would it be if we live in a world where there's a Skibbity Toilet reference in Half-Life 3, but not in Borderlands 4?
Okay, yeah, that would be pretty
Like,
messed up.
imagine if the Borderlands 4 writers were more fucking, like, restrain
Restrain.
themselves more.
I think everyone involved with Half-Life should be proud of Skibbity Toilet and claim ownership of it and take it bring it into the family. That is, part of the lineage there. But yeah, you think this game could come out this year?
Fucking anything could happen this year. Have you fucking seen what shit's like out there? Anything could happen.
Try not to. Yeah.
Yeah. Like GTA 6 could be delayed until like 2028 just for the hell of it.
Oh yeah, that'd just be
Fucking
funny.
Microsoft could like just pull out of the console market all entirely. Like fucking none of these things are off the table at this point.
Yeah, you know, I think if this game really is in the stage of getting FSR3 and optimization and, sprucing up the AI and stuff like that, if that's where they're at, it does sound like it could release this year. But who knows? Honestly,
I
it's a
will
black
say,
box, and Valve developers can take their time because they really are operating on their own timelines because Steam makes enough money. But go ahead, you were going to say.
I truly believe there is not a video game I would rather review less than Half-Life 3, because holy shit, can you imagine the reaction if you didn't like it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's that I feel like it will be another one of these cultural inflection points. Although, we could talk about this real quick. Let me do this real first. Shit. I wish I wouldn't have talked about this story because my plan was to get this in Fantasy Critic, and now Nikki is trying to do the same thing. Nikki, it's we're in the bid finalization period, so you can only bid on things that other people have bid on. On Monday, you'll be able to bid on this again, but I don't think you should.
And Nikki
Just
really needs it right now. I looked at the Fantasy Critic the other day. They're on minus points already.
Yeah, I mean, we're all going to get those minus points eventually because there were not good options for the counter pick, and Nikki's just happen to come out first. But we'll see. Yeah, Nikki will need a little bit of help. But yeah, I was what were we going to? I was talking about. So I was going to bring something else
Half-Life
up.
3 or something?
Yeah, something Half-Life 3. just yeah, okay, someone pointed out like Steam OS might like launch as a standalone thing later this year. They could tie it together with that, sure. But yeah, overall I just think that they will take this and be like, okay, we are making games. There are people inside of Valve that want to make video games still. So despite Steam's success, we are going to be the company that does that. And I think this will be and this was the other point I was going to bring up. This will be a major inflection point for the industry. It does feel like gamers are beginning to get a little bit annoyed with the way the like YouTube and reactionary ecosystem has been using them to like crank through ad revenue. Um, and I think it's been because of Avowed and a handful of other games recently where it's like people have been told by their favorite YouTuber that these games are woke garbage made by people who hate them. And then they go and try them because it's on Game Pass. And they're like, wait, I think this game's just fun to play. What are you talking about? And there's nothing as annoying about it the way you're describing why you're freaking out. And the backlash is beginning to grow in the other direction, it feels like a little bit. Now, of course, it just takes one Ubisoft game to come in and undo all that and put us right back to where we started. But I'm hoping some people are starting to like put two and two together and realizing that, God, you don't have to hate every game that comes out. It's okay to just ignore it if you don't want to play it. And Half-Life
Yeah.
3 could make that super worse, or maybe if people like try to do that to Half-Life 3 as well, it could be the thing that kind of breaks some of these YouTubers. I don't know.
I do really hope that, like, at the end of the year, when some of those people are trying to like rally up what games were on their side in the culture war or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and like tally that up, they include Like a Dragon again, because that game literally has a whole sub story where you help a woman understand that sex work is real work and that
Uh-huh.
she should write a book about it because sex is an important part of culture, and just like see if they like defend that as anti woke or something.
Yep, it's incredible. Like that, the whole franchise now has become, or at least maybe it's always been, but as far as I played the recent games, is hey, wouldn't it be awesome if everyone was like super nice
Yeah.
and like was super empathetic to everyone around them and it turned every enemy into a friend through the power of friendship and love.
And
Um,
empathy.
Yes, just empathy as a back of the box video game feature, like that is where Like a Dragon is at these days. And so, yeah, of course, it's just absurd for them to claim ownership of that. All right, let's keep moving here. EA releases source code for Command and Conquer 2 modders. This is from Dean Takahashi at GameSpeak. EA has released the source code for several Command and Conquer games, including Command and Conquer, Tiberian Dawn, Red Alert, Renegade, Generals, plus its expansion Zero Hour, under the GPL license. This move aims to empower the modding community, with EA acknowledging the community's dedication to keeping these games alive. The release includes the full source code, enabling deeper modifications and improvements by the community. EA has also enabled Steam Workshop support for several of the Command and Conquer titles, allowing users to easily upload and share custom maps and more. Additionally, EA released a CNC modding support pack with source files for the game using the Sage engine. These actions follow previous efforts by EA to support the CNC community, including the release of the Command and Conquer Ultimate Collection on Steam and the source code for the Command and Conquer Remastered Collection DLL files. The Command and Conquer producer at EA, Jim Vasella, emphasized the company's ambition to deliver continued improvements to the franchise. And a longtime member of the CNC community spearheaded the initiative to restore the source code archives and facilitate these releases. So, yeah, EA doing some cool stuff. That's weird, but very welcome. I love this stuff. I am every day I wake up more and more like turning to open source as a savior for all of society's woes. And of course, it's not that, but that's what I got these days. And whenever a corporation takes something that they own and says, let's unleash it as an open source a thing that people can claim ownership and do what they want with it, it is a very nice thing to see. And I think this is only going to do very good things for Command and Conquer, to the point where if EA goes on to make a new Command and Conquer, this act of goodwill will actually pay dividends. Do you think that's right?
Yeah, that's like my very cynical analyst brain looking at it, going
Oh,
like,
I think
"Oh,
that's fair.
this, yeah, this is like the one franchise that EA looked at that they have any interest in keeping alive or doing anything with, and they were like, which one of these games can we like get some goodwill out of and how can we make sure that it doesn't affect any microtransactions that are currently in the games that we want to sell microtransactions in, or we want to sell full price products of. I think they looked at all these back catalog of Command and Conquer games that still get, not incredible numbers on Steam, but still have a user base and a dedicated community. And they were like, yeah, like it doesn't hurt us to like release a source code for this because none of this source code affects any of our other games. It's not like it will help cheaters with Apex
Right.
Legends. It's not like it is going to influence how much people are spending on The Sims. It's, totally siloed off, and it's a feel good news story for them, for a franchise that they probably have interest in bringing back at some point. Especially because like that Command and Conquer remake sold pretty
It did
well.
very well, yeah, and they did a good job
So
with it too. It was, way better than what happened with Warcraft, with its, remastered. I can't remember what that was called, but yeah, Warcraft 3 was just people really were not happy with that. Yes, you're right, 100%. That's how it always goes, though.
and it's
You can,
interesting that EA have an active producer for Command and Conquer. There's someone whose job title is Command and Conquer producer, just at
yeah.
EA, to
I'm not,
oversee that franchise.
if that didn't exist before that remaster, I bet they appointed someone after that because it did so well. So they made it make sense. But yeah, I think this is an example of how software should kind of always work, though, where we know the motivations of corporations, we know what their desires are, and instead of them always sort of trying to build a dam and a moat around themselves so that they can be protected from any sort of competition from open source, getting them to work hand in hand with it is the ideal scenario. Because I do not think we can make corporations into good things, good actors. All we can do is try to line up their interests with the rest of ours, occasionally, and then get something good out of it. And that this is an example of that, because you're right. This is not magnanimous. This is not them being angels. It is them trying to set up a something, or the individual work inside of the company. That could be someone that believes in open
Yeah,
source.
that's
Yeah.
for this to happen, someone has to lobby for it. Someone
Yes. Exactly.
internally has to champion this as an idea and go to the money people and be like, "Hey, no, this is like something worth doing." So like not to take away from the hard work that someone and several people obviously did to gather source code for these old games, which oftentimes isn't easy to find and to locate. So yeah, like shout outs to the people who worked on this because it's a really fucking cool thing.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, Metroid Dread devs' new game is Blades of Fire, releases in May. This is from Blair Marnell at GameSpot. It's been a long time since Mercury Steam released an original game, but the studio behind Metroid Samus Returns and Metroid Dread has finally revealed a first look at its upcoming dark fantasy action RPG, Blades of Fury. In the announcement trailer, players are introduced to Aaron D. Lira as he prepares to face his destiny head on against some dangerous foes. Luckily for Aaron, I'm going to say Aaron instead of Ron. Luckily for Aaron, he's well armed with weapons of his own creation. In the game's backstory, Aaron is the firstborn of the king's ward, and he's forced to take a stand after the recently crowned Queen Nerea uses dark magic to solidify her power in the kingdom. Thanks to Nerea's spell, all steel in the kingdom has been turned to stone, and only the evil creatures at her command have the divine metal that can obliterate any normal weapon used against them. That's why Aaron will have to forge his own weapons to counter the divine metal's power, and there are several different weapons that can be chosen. Yeah, hey, this game, not a Metroidvania, at least, or not a 2D Metroidvania. There could be some Metroidvania elements to it. It honestly looks a lot like God of War 2018.
Do you want what it really reminds me of is if Mercury Steam made that Castlevania Lords of Shadow game in
Yes,
2025.
right.
So I had that guess on Blue Sky where I was like, I'm calling my shot that Mercury Steam are working on a Castlevania thing for Konami. They're super not, but this isn't a million miles off of
No,
where that would have gone if they had kept doing that. Um, this looks interesting. It's 505 Publishing, who obviously like do Control. I'm not sure if they're still publishing Control
they are not
technically.
publishing Control 2.
Yeah, I can't remember who even owns. Yeah, I can't remember the last thing 505 put out.
Yeah, I mean 505 does a
Payday
lot of
3?
B games and things like that. And
Yeah.
and honestly, in terms of, I don't know, when I look at this, I think B game, and not in a negative way. It looks like the B movie equivalent of God of War 2018 or the Castlevania games, as you pointed out. So yeah, I think that this looks pretty cool, and Mercury Steam feels like they are ready to take a big step forward with a big original game. Good for them. I know there have been reports out of Mercury Steam that there were some workplace toxicity. Of course, you always hope that that stuff has been addressed and is not a problem or is minimized and mitigated as much as possible. But as far as this game goes, it looks. I'm curious. I'm curious. I would like to see how it performs and how it does and how it plays. But yeah, good for them. I think the problem for me is, God, I hope Nintendo found someone to make the next 2D Metroid, because apparently it's not Mercury Steam, or if it is, it's another team there. And they seem like they must have been really busy making this game, because it looks like a very, very big game. So in my head, I was always fantasy booking. Yeah, they would make the next new Metroid game after Dread, because Dread was so good. Of course, Nintendo would want to keep them on doing that, but maybe they weren't able to do that, and maybe Mercury Steam's like, we don't even want to work with you because we have bigger ambitions for our own game. And again, good for them, but God, I would like a new Metroid. I don't know. All right. Forza Horizon 5 on PS5 Pro even has features the Xbox version doesn't have. This is from Alex Coe at DualShockers. Last month, Microsoft surprised gamers by announcing that another Xbox exclusive game is headed to the PS5, and that's racing game Forza Horizon 5. It's not just a straight port, as today, Playground Games has revealed that the PS5 version will even have features not available on Xbox platforms. In a new blog post by Playground Games, the developer confirmed that the PS5 Pro version of the game will feature in-game ray tracing in gameplay and in the open world. The Xbox versions only has this feature available in garages. While this might seem like a small detail, this is still odd to see, given an Xbox first-party game technically will look better on a competitor's console. Excuse me. At the very least, car reflections should look way better on the PS5 Pro. Alongside that, Playground Games also announced the graphical modes players can expect for the PS5 version of the game. There's a performance mode at 60 frames per second, a quality mode that runs at 30 frames per second. Playground Games added that on PS5 Pro, the performance mode receives increased visual fidelity, while quality mode adds ray trace car reflections to races and free roam. Lexi, I'm not going to turn on ray traced reflections if it means I'm getting 30 frames per second in a racing game, but that's me. Still, the story here is the game technically has features and looks better on a PlayStation than it does on an Xbox. Should people freak out about this? And to me, I don't know, this feels like a very normal thing these days. You're putting it on a new platform, selling it to more people. That's going to make the juice of this effort worth the squeeze in a lot of ways. So it just doesn't shock me all that much. How about you?
Yeah, I feel like super bad for the people who were probably working on this version of the game, and at some point they had to go into a meeting with Microsoft giving updates on how development is going and explain like, hey, we want this game to be the best it can be on the platform that we are
Yeah, why
releasing it
wouldn't
on.
they?
Yeah, of course we thank you for your support, and you own us and all of this, but also we want it to be the best version of the game that people can play.
Yes.
Um and the idea of like selling a version of Forza Horizon 5 that is like intentionally held back on PlayStation 5 Pro
Right.
also
A more
doesn't
powerful
sound good.
platform? Yeah.
Yeah, because that's kind of the exact thing that Microsoft was promising the courts they wouldn't do. Was release subpar versions of Call of Duty and things like that on a competitor's console. So in a lot of ways, the existence of the PS5 Pro has put them in a very awkward position because it's a box which is better than their box on a fundamental power level. And they have to like be seen as good sports, to be seen as good business partners, which you always want to be a good business partner. Like, yeah, they just have to work with that.
And I think, it's an awkward position for maybe the Xbox platform people within Microsoft, maybe, if they even care. But at the very least, it's not awkward for the developers because, as you said, their job is to make the game run as good as it possibly can wherever they're putting the game out, and that is going to be their priority first and foremost. They're not going to hold it back because of some like implied or some perceived idea that they are favoring PlayStation over their home console. They are not going to be thinking about that. These are people who are making a game and they want their game to be as good as possible. So
The people who like I do genuinely feel bad for in this situation is the community managers and the public facing
yes,
developers who are gonna get shit from like absolute assholes who will use this as yet
entitled
another.
gamers.
Yes. And it's like, man, these people are literally just doing their job in the very simplest of terms. Like they have done nothing wrong here in this situation.
Yep. All right, a couple more stories here. Pokemon Champions on Nintendo Switch to be digital only paid game. Just kind of small details still coming out of that Pokemon Day Direct presentation that we had earlier this week. This is one of the basically the only new game that they announced. Obviously,
Woo!
Pokemon Legends ZA, Pokemon Legends ZA. It hasn't come out yet, but this was a new announcement in Champions, which is the battle mode from a Pokemon Stadium game, essentially. Uh,
Woo!
ripped out of a game, ripped out of a game, put on iOS, Android, and Switch, and they are going to sell it to people. So it's not going to be like a free download. They're going to sell it to you, but it's not going to be a physical game. It'll just be a digital only thing, which makes sense because it's a phone app that they're also
Yeah.
putting out on Switch, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say I have like negative. I have no interest in any Pokemon stuff whatsoever.
I'm pretty
And
sure on your continent, Jordan Midler has sucked up all of that for himself, so no one else
yeah,
does either. Yeah.
um, all Irish people hate the whatever British people like.
Uh
So
huh.
I see Jordan like that. I'm like, well, gotta hate this.
Oh man,
I'm
get it together.
curious. Yeah, we didn't get to hear the reaction from one Jan Ochoa
You
during the
heard it there.
live
He goes,
stream.
"Woo!"
Woo! Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's all I wanted to hear. Cool.
That's
Okay.
yeah, that's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think they didn't give us an idea of like when this is coming, but it's probably or maybe they said like a general time frame. But either way, probably this year. Um, I'm
Sorry, Karate-chan in chat just said Ireland is a Digimon country, and boy, this racism sweeping America has gotten out of hand. The
I mean,
anti-Irish sentiment.
I mean, point out the lie. I don't see it. All right. According to analysts, Avowed will be a bigger hit than Indiana Jones and the Great Circle in its first month. This is from Alberto Garrido at Game Reactor. February has proved to be a tremendously busy month for video game releases like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Civilization 7, Like a Dragon, Avowed, Monster Hunter Wilds, and more. And these are just the most important ones. You can check out the rest in, they have an article. And now that some of them have been on sale for a few weeks, we can extrapolate how they have performed or will perform in terms of sales and popularity. The game analytics agenda Mind Game Data has shared its projections for the first month on the market for Avowed, the recent RPG from Obsidian and Xbox Game Studios. And the data is quite surprising. According to the analyst firm, Avowed will reach 4.9 million players in its first month on sale, including both Game Pass subscribers who have played it there and those who have purchased a copy of the game digitally or physically. That figure alone is telling enough, and it seems we weren't the only ones to enjoy its colorful adventure. Blah, blah, blah. Points out that is more so than the around 4 million that Indiana Jones managed in its first month. Um, I to me, the way I read this, Lexi, is that people are kind of feeling good about Microsoft's game output in a way that they were not for a while there. So it's like actually what's happening is Avowed is building on the success of Indiana Jones, where people are maybe more willing to be like, oh, let me get my Xbox out, let me get it connected again. I'm playing Indiana Jones, and now Avowed's here, and people who were maybe waiting on the sideline are like, well, now there's two good games, so that I have even more of a reason to go over there to either buy these games or subscribe to Game Pass, or I got Game Pass because of Indiana Jones, and now I'm playing Avowed on top of that. So I think the sort of idea that Microsoft had behind acquiring all these studios and releasing all these games is starting to pay off, where it is having a little bit of a network effect, and one is doing better than the next, or one
And
is
like,
doing better than the last.
yeah, and that goes especially so for a studio like Obsidian, who are one of the very few Microsoft studios right now who have multiple releases under their belt since they have been acquired by Microsoft.
Hmm.
Like, it's one of the few studios that you can look to and you can go, Outer Worlds, Pentiment, and Grounded all have kind of been supported and came out under Microsoft's like watch.
And all like
And
kind of punched above their weight.
Yeah, and people generally like. So like people feel good about Obsidian games at the moment. Um,
You know what? We could probably wrap up the show. Avowed is selling well. Good for it. It
Good
is.
game, go play it.
Yeah, I really enjoy that game. It is going to have long legs. It's gonna do well over time. People are gonna be picking that game up throughout this entire year, I think. All right, let's see here. Poll question. If you're ready for it, Jan. I'm not. So there we go. Let me get it up over here. Do you have a handheld gaming PC? Let me refresh that and see if that is the right one. There we go. Nope. The right one is, have you ever bought a controller from 8-Bit Dough? I have. In fact, I just bought one yesterday. And holy crap, 48% of our respondents, of the 2.6 thousand people that voted, have bought an 8-Bit Dough controller. Man, that is quite
To be fair,
a few of you.
when I think of the Giant Bomb audience, that is maybe the most biased
Oh,
poll that you
yes.
have done in a long time
I mean,
of
we
people who would
definitely,
be inclined to buy an 8-bit Dough controller. It's
and
people who watch Giant Bomb.
people who have been influenced by us not shutting up about it. 52% said no. Yeah, that Ultimate 2 controller here should be here tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to trying it out. So, I got the purple one. I'm pretty excited about it. Oh, excuse me. All right. We have a new poll question before we get to that. Lexi, why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet, what you have going on, all that good stuff.
Yeah, find me at basically Lexi on Blue Sky. And the Start Menu podcast has recently come back. Second episode is going up on Monday. We have special guest Squidge Rugby on, which, if you know anything about rugby, is very exciting. He
Oh,
is probably the best rugby analyst in the business, but also a big old fucking nerd, and he's great. Um, so we hung out with him and talked about the Pokemon presentation and what he's been playing, and Rugby 25, which is a bad video game.
well then. Jan, should we be doing this in Video Ninja
Maybe.
in the future? Yeah, okay, cool. All right. Well, new poll question: where are you playing Monster Hunter Wilds? Xbox, PlayStation, PC. And here's a little special one for y'all out there. I'm not playing it. You can also vote for that if you're not playing it instead of just trying to see the results. We'll get the results of that. All right, everybody. We have so we did the new poll question. Where are you playing Monster Hunter Wilds? Thank you, Lexi, so much for hanging out with me today and talk about video games. I really appreciate it.
For talking, Grubb, this is the first time I've thanked you.
Yep, that's right. And first and only time you're ever going to have to thank me. 100%. Thank you, Jan, for producing through this mess as we kind of piece everything together and figure out what it's going to look like now. Thank you, everybody, for watching all week while we did some fun stuff on Giant Bomb. But most importantly, thank you for watching and listening this show. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye. I'm going to reach my hand over to Lexi's side of the window. Bye.